Hello, today I'll be talking about my top 10 favorite rock slash metal albums from the year 2006. It has been a while since I've uploaded a video, 10 or 11 days, somewhere around there. I do apologize for that. It's just more recently I've just been low on ideas, and my mind lately has just been on other things. But either way, I'm definitely glad I'm finally back with a new video for you guys. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this. These 10 albums will be in no particular order, but let's go ahead and get started. Starting off with one of the bigger names in the world of metalcore, All That Remains, with their album The Fall of Ideals. And this is often considered their best, or at least one of their best. And nowadays, for me, this album and For We Are Many kind of fight for being my favorite. I might lean more towards this album though, but I do still think For We Are Many is a pretty strong album from All That Remains. I really dig that album personally, but definitely can't go wrong with Fall of Ideals though. You have some of their biggest songs on here, like This Calling, Not Alone, and Six. Six is probably a top 5 All That Remains song for me, and maybe my favorite song on the album. I really like that song a lot. I also dig the melodic section that you get around the minute and a half mark or so. But yeah, also you have Phil Labonte, and I definitely think he does a pretty killer vocal performance on this album. I mean, you get some pretty good growls and screams, such as in songs like The Weak Willed or Empty Inside, but you also get some pretty good clean vocals or singing from him, such as in songs like Whispers and We Stand. But yeah, while the singles on the album are pretty good, I think you also get some really good deep cuts like Whispers and Empty Inside. But yeah, all around really good stuff, and definitely one of the band's best. And I'll be moving to something a bit more melodic, or at least leans more towards rock rather than metal, with Breaking Benjamin, Phobia. And this is actually my favorite Breaking Benjamin album. I mean, Saturate would be in close second for me. I do like the raw heaviness of that album, but yeah, Phobia definitely has to be at the top for me. You have some of the band's best work, and also have some of their most well-known songs on here, especially with The Diary of Jane and Breath. But I think the album also has some really good deep cuts too, like Unknown Soldier, which is maybe a top 20 Breaking Benjamin song for me. I'd say the same for Evil Angel. You, I think, is maybe one of my personal favorites on the album. Feels a bit darker. I mean, of course, a lot of the album is dark. I mean, whether it be subject matter or just the overall mood, maybe. But the song "You" especially definitely sounds maybe slightly darker than some of the other songs on here. But personally, I really dig that song a lot. You have other really great songs like "Until the End" and "Dance with the Devil." Had Enough is a song that's grown to be maybe one of my favorites when it comes to the second half. But yeah, all around, definitely a really great album, and personally my favorite from Breaking Benjamin. And then now we'll be moving to the next album with Deftones, Saturday Night Wrist. So yeah, this would be their final album with Chi on bass, rest in peace. And also, this would be their first album without Terry Day in the producer seat. This time we have Bob Ezrin producing, and yeah, this from what I've heard, or based on what I've read, apparently this was a difficult album for them to make, or maybe there was some tension within the band, and with all that, I think they ended up putting out another really good album. Now, I wouldn't rank this album as one of the band's best by any means, but I still think it's still pretty good. This album this time around feels a bit more experimental, and I think the singles on here are pretty good. Hole in the Earth and Maine. I think Maine is a single from them that should have been bigger. I really like that song a lot, especially Surge's feature in that song. But yeah, Maine, definitely one of my favorites on the album, and same with, of course, Hole in the Earth, which is maybe the biggest song on here. But you also have some pretty good deep cuts like Sherry Waves, which is one of the fan favorites on here. You move towards the second half where you get some of the more lesser known songs, but when you move towards the second half, I really like Rats, 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 which is one of the heavier songs on the album. And you also have Kim Dracula, which to me has maybe one of my favorite vocal performances from Chino on the album. I mean, he sounds great on really throughout the whole album. But when it comes to his vocal performances on here, some of my favorites are probably in songs like Kim Dracula and Hole in the Earth and Cherry Waves. But yeah, all around really good stuff. Again, might not rank as one of their best, but still another pretty good album from Deftones. I feel, to me, I think they have no bad albums, and yes, including Gore. I know some people don't like Gore, but I am a Gore defender. I mean, yeah, Gore would probably be at the bottom for me, but still, I still think that album is also solid. But moving on, we'll be moving to Incubus with Like Grenades. So yeah, this would be their final album in the 2000s, and for me, their last really good album, in my opinion. I mean, after this, you would get If Not Now When, which is, to me, their worst. A bit too mellow for me, but it does have some songs I do enjoy, like the title track, Promises, Promises, Adolescence, which is probably my favorite on that album, and Switchblade's also pretty good off that album. But still, I've never could get into that album. And then you also have 8, which I think that album is just alright at best. Has some decent stuff on it, but for me, I wouldn't call it great, but at least decent though. And then you also have the 2 EPs, Trustfall, Side B and Side A, and I probably like Side A more, but Side B I think is also decent. But yeah, Like Grenades, pretty good album. I mean, yeah, I'd probably say the first half is obviously the more stronger half, while the second half is maybe not as strong. But I do like the second half though. Some of my favorites in the second half are probably Oil and Water. I do like the Earth to Bella songs, part 1 and 2. I do like both of those. Oil and Water is also solid. But yeah, I even like the more heavier songs on here, like Rogues and the title track and A Kiss to Send Us Off. But I think the album also has some really good singles on here, especially Dig, which has maybe one of Brandon's best vocal performances, maybe ever. I really dig his vocals a lot in that song. And I think he also sounds great in many other songs on here, like Animali and Love Hurts, and I do like his vocals in the Earth to Bella songs too. But yeah, Like Grenades, another pretty good album from Incubus. I wouldn't put it on the same level as like Morning View or Make Yourself or Science, but still a pretty good album though, I'd still say. But now we're moving to something a bit heavier, moving back to metalcore with Killswitch Engage, As Daylight Dies. And for me, they're best when it comes to the Howard Jones era. I know some people might point to the end of Heartache. I know some people point to that album as their favorite or as the band's best, but I personally disagree. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think The End of Heartache is a great album, of course, but I feel like they would go on to do even better with this album, As Daylight Dies, their second album with Howard, and for me, one of the band's best. I mean, you have some of the band's best work on here, like My Curse and The Arms of Sorrow. You also get some really good deep cuts on here, like Break the Silence and For You. This is Absolution. It's another pretty good song on the album, I'd say. But yeah, while the singles on here are also pretty good, you also get some pretty good lesser known songs on here, like Break the Silence and For You. I do like Unbroken, but yeah, all around, another really good album from Killswitch Engage, and probably one of the best metal albums of 2006, at least in my opinion. But moving on, we're moving to an album that's going to be maybe one of my favorite albums of all time, to be honest. I mean, the more I think about it, this is really an album you can listen to from front to back with no issue. But yeah, the album I am talking about is from Lacuna Coil, their album Karma Code. Now, when it comes to Lacuna Coil, a lot of people point to Comalies as one of their favorites or their favorite or the band's best. And I mean, I do think Comalies is one of their best. It would be in close second for me, but I personally kind of lean towards Karma Code being maybe their best, or at least my favorite from the band. I mean, again, an album you can listen to from front to back with no issue. I can't remember the name of the producer on this album, but this would be their final album with that producer. They would go on to work with Don Gilmore with Shallow Life and Dark Adrenaline. But yeah, this to me, it really is a no-skip album, and Andreas, forgive me if I'm butchering his name, but I feel like him and Christina do have great chemistry on this album. I know some people are not big on the male vocals in this band. Some fans are that seem to be that way, while other fans do like his vocals. But for me, I like it. I like his voice. I do like his singing. When it comes to the growls we would get from him later on, I have mixed feelings on that. But we can talk about that another day. That can be for a whole separate video maybe. But back to Karma Code. Really strong album, and honestly one of my favorite albums of 2006, maybe top 5, honestly. I mean, of course, Christina, her vocal performance to No Surprise is also great. To me, one of the best front women in the world of rock and metal, at least in my opinion. I personally really dig her voice, and this is definitely a band I'd love to see live someday, because sadly, I still have never seen them live, but again, hopefully one day I'll get to see them. But some of my favorites on here, Our Truth, which is, of course, one of the big songs on here. Within Me, which is maybe has some of the best vocal work from Christina on the album. I also enjoy What I See and The Game. He has some really good deep cuts on this album. Some of the band's best deep cuts, I'd say. Again, with The Game and To the Edge and What I See. Fragments of Faith, I think, is also really good. You also have Without Fear, which, if I remember correctly, is one of the songs that they have where they speak Italian. And yeah, definitely another really good song, and kind of grown to be maybe one of my favorites on here, actually. And of course, you also have their cover of Enjoy the Silence, which is one of the fan favorites. And I like this cover. I'll admit it's not one of my favorites on the album, but still, again, another pretty good cover, I'd say, or a pretty good cover. But yeah, all around, definitely a really great album. And if you haven't heard this album, definitely check it out, especially if you like 2000s rock or if you like gothic metal, stuff like that. But yeah, really good stuff. And also a band that I feel should have been bigger. But moving on, we'll be moving to the world of nu metal. And one of their earliest bands in that genre, POD, with Testament, or not Testament, Testify. And for me, probably one of the band's best. I mean, probably my third or fourth favorite album from them. I mean, you have some of the band's best work on here, like Roots in Stereo, which I think is one of the band's best album openers. And you also have Goodbye for Now, which of course you have a Katy Perry feature in that song, which of course she would appear later in the song. And I do like her vocals in the song. And this would be, of course, before she would get big with her solo stuff, or when she would start coming out with big songs like Dark Horse and Fireworks and all that stuff. But yeah, Goodbye for Now, definitely a really good song for POD. You also get some really good deep cuts, like Sounds Like War, which is one of my favorites on the album. Same with Teachers. I mean, POD has always had really good deep cuts, especially in albums like Satellite and Fundamental Elements of Southtown, and this album too. But yeah, this would be their second album with Jason on guitar, and also their final album with Jason. And I like the Jason Trubee era. I mean, I do also enjoy the self-title. I think the self-title is also one of their best. Definitely different, definitely a fairly unique album in their discography. But again, I personally really dig the self-title. And Testify, I think, is also another really good album for a POD. But yeah, really good stuff in my opinion. But let's go ahead and move on to the next album in my list. Red, with their album End of Silence, their debut album. So yeah, I'd say one of the band's best. I mean, Innocence and Instinct might be my favorite, but this album's definitely not far behind. This album is definitely in very close second. You can definitely notice some Linkin Park isms in here. Of course, you don't have the rapping of Linkin Park, but again, I can definitely hear Linkin Park in here, which is definitely cool with me. I do enjoy Linkin Park. Linkin Park was one of the first bands that I ever got into, and so of course this album or this band would definitely be up my alley. And yeah, definitely one of the best albums of 2006. I mean, you also have some of the biggest songs on here, like Already Over and Breathe Into Me, which is definitely the big one for them. You also have Let Go, which has to be probably a top 5 Red song for me. I absolutely love that song. You also have maybe my favorite ballad from Red, that song being Pieces. That song is definitely incredible. And if you like modern rock or you like modern rock ballads, that's a song that is definitely a must listen for me. I mean, Pieces, again, definitely a really good song. You move towards some of the more lesser known songs on here. I really like Break Me Down. Gave It All Away is also really good, but yeah, all around, definitely a really great album from Red. And of course, if you haven't heard this album, definitely check them out. Definitely check it out. Now we'll be moving to an album that I've been listening to for years, probably over a decade, and I've been a fan of this band for, yeah, again, probably over a decade, and they were also one of the first bands that I ever got into. I discovered them in, like, I want to say like around 4th grade or something like that, but that band is 3 Days Grace with 1X, and this is my favorite album from them, and this is another album that I'd say you can listen to from front to back with no issue. I mean, definitely have some of the band's best work on here. I mean, you also have Animal I Have Become, which is a contender for maybe being my favorite song from them. Absolutely killer song. Definitely one of the band's best singles. You have some of the band's best singles on here, of course. Animal I've Become, Pain, Never Too Late. I mean, you also have Riot, which is a song that definitely goes well live. I definitely noticed that for myself when I saw them both times last year. And I met them both times last year too. And yeah, it was definitely really cool to meet 3 Days Grace. But yeah, 1X, absolutely killer album. I mean, you move towards some of the lesser known songs. I really like Get Out Alive. Over and Over is also really good. Time of Dying is probably one of my favorites when it comes to the second half, and maybe one of my favorites in general on the album too. And you also have It's All Over, which is maybe my favorite of their album openers. And, you know, it might be. It's a contender. I mean, It's All Over is probably a top, I don't know, top 15, maybe top 20 3 Days Grace song for me. I don't know, I personally really love that song a lot. And of course, Adam Gante's vocals on the album, of course, are great. And he also sounds great with Saint Asonia. So of course, if you're not familiar with Saint Asonia, or if you haven't heard him, definitely check him out. That's where Adam is at now. But yeah, 1X, definitely a really great album. I even got Adam Gante to sign it last year. Yeah, definitely a really great album, and one of my favorite albums, definitely of 2006. But moving to the final album for this video, we got 10,000 Days by Tool. And yeah, definitely another really good album from Tool. I mean, honestly, the first 3 albums from Tool kind of fight for being my favorite album from them. I mean, yeah, so those albums, of course, being Undertow, Anima, and Lateralis, but yeah, while I wouldn't rank this album as one of my favorites from them, I still think it's pretty good. I mean, some of my favorites on here are definitely, you know, Vicarious, Zombie. Of course, you also have the epic Rosetta Stone, which is another highlight off the album. Right Into, The Pot. So many great songs off this album, and some songs on here that I would maybe consider some of the band's best work. But yeah, all around, really good stuff. And of course, Maynard also sounds great on here, especially in songs like Zombie and Right Into and Rosetta Stone. But yeah, really good stuff. But yeah, that is my top 10 favorite rock/metal albums of 2006. But yeah, definitely really cool to finally come back with a new video. Again, it's definitely been a while, 10, 11 days, somewhere around there. And again, I do apologize for that, but definitely cool to be back with a new video. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on my top 10. Let me know if some of these albums would be in your list. And of course, let me know your list of your favorite albums of 2006 in the comment section below and all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment to like, subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.